Okay, everyone. Hello, my name is Laya Bisk, and I'm a Blackbaud Customer Success Manager based out of Toronto. Thank you all so much for joining me and Alex, who I will introduce momentarily, for the next 45 minutes for an exciting session on building a culture of innovation. The story you'll hear today begins about 4 years ago at the University of Manitoba's Donor Relations Department. If we've got folks in the audience joining us from higher ed institutions, drop a thumbs up, a heart, a smile in the chat, say hello. We're glad you're here. The University of Manitoba's Donor Relations Department has undergone a major transformation in the past 4 years. Becoming a data-driven organization required a significant shift in culture, fundamental values and expectations from the business. And if there are any folks in the audience who can relate, give us a smile or a heart in the chat. During today's presentation, we'll discuss the roadmap taken to achieve this transformation in a relatively very short period of time, from the initial sponsorship at the executive level to the redefining of roles and responsibilities throughout the units. Advancement Services changed from a service-driven department to an IT solutions provider, and this enabled the business to quickly change the relationship they had with data and the ability to access it. I am so thrilled to introduce you to the driving force behind this transformation, Alex Campomanes. Alex serves as the Executive Director of Advancement Services at the University of Manitoba, a position he assumed 4 years ago. In this time, he has orchestrated a significant transformation within the department, shifting it from a service-based model to a dynamic IT-focused unit. With more than 25 years of experience in IT, analytics, and leadership across diverse industries, Alex brings a wealth of expertise to his role. He possesses a remarkable ability to cultivate a data-driven culture, elevating data from mere information to a cornerstone of the university's decision-making process. And there are our photos, and you can also see us. Hello. I will skip forward. There we go. Alex, I'd like to begin by setting the stage for our audience. University of Manitoba is a 146-year-old institution. Can you tell us a little bit about the starting point for you on this massive innovation journey and the key pains and problems you are seeking to solve for the university's donor relations department?
Sure, Leah, and thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that my mic wasn't on mute. So I was hired in the summer of 2020, and when I was first interviewed, I really saw an opportunity to get back into something that I hadn't done in a few years, because I was doing a lot of contract work for about 3 or 4 years, where I was just being commissioned to do smaller projects and deliveries, and so I really didn't spend the last 4 years before that mentoring and growing teams and building on something that I had built. And so they simply told me, we want to become more data driven, and they walked over a lot of the different areas where they needed work and focus, and it seemed like a pretty straightforward job going into it. The only difference was that most of the organizations that I had worked with in the past, which were private, already had a culture of innovation, and so a lot of the technical implementations were purely just technical implementations. You get a project, you look at your deliverables, and then you roll things out. And so the perception to me was that this was going to be just a straightforward technical implementation. So I got in and I started looking at a lot of the different issues that they were having when it came to data and becoming data driven. And these are really the four different areas, but they're all interrelated. Time. So data took a long time to get to the business, days, if not weeks, 10 business days on average for an ad hoc report starting from scratch. Quality. A lot of the data was inaccurate. And what I mean by inaccurate is not really the data was wrong. A lot of the culture surrounding request for data and delivery of data had different definitions. And so they were always asking for data differently, and they were always adding exceptions to some of the data that they had requested. And then there were always different people preparing it. And so it became inaccurate for the purpose of what it was intended in that sense. Sustainability, the data was always manually pulled. And so everything was done on a service level. If you needed something, it was done, but there was really never any system built to reproduce that in the future or even extend it as far as having the business self-serve for this information on a regular basis. And then scalability. This was not an environment that was conducive to scalability. It was unscalable. And so it always became a bottleneck. And so the business did not become data driven, and the team was not really data driven. And it prevented them from becoming data driven because they focused all of their time on the operations of it instead of actually building a platform which allowed continued growth and continued improvement. So when we just dig into these four issues and what really led to them, I talked a little bit about, a lot of the manual work. So all of the data was manually pulled out of a front end, which was Razor's Edge 7. So we hadn't gone to Razor's Edge NXT yet. And then transforming the data. So applying business rules, filtering out certain records, changing or recategorizing groups into the different types of classifications that the business wanted to see the data in, and then preparing the data for review, like actually the layout of the report and how the business wanted to see it. And so this was either done in Microsoft Access or Excel. So in Microsoft Access was really the more complicated data pulls, where they would pull multiple tables of data into an Access database. And then there were literally hundreds of mini queries, either to delete some records or clean up some records or reclassify some records that had to go through one by one. And then the requests were always different. And so as somebody preparing the data would go through a lot of these different Access queries, they would implement any type of new changes or exceptions that the user had requested this time. And then, so you had regular reports, which were not really regular because it was always, I want this regular report, but I want this added to it. And then you had ad hoc reports, which really, really took a long time. And so the system was very complicated. It was very manual. None of the business rules were captured in some type of an automatable sense. There was not a reporting platform. So the reporting platform was people creating reports. And then from a cultural standpoint, we said yes to everything. Anytime the business wanted something, we said yes to them and we included it. And so that's what really made everything a one-off. And exceptions were the rule. There was a lot of back and forth. And so if the business is not very clear, so if you don't have a common language and a common set of parameters that engage, your business with your tech team, then there's a lot of back and forth. And so, and this is another thing that led to incorrect data or incorrect requirements, or it just added to the time, it added to the accuracy, and it just snowballed. Because at the end of the day, what would happen is it would take so long, people still had questions at the end of a report, and that was it. I've already asked, 5 times for a revision to this. I can't ask again because it's going to take even longer. And so they would just give up, or, it didn't align with the philosophy of having information at the speed of thought and making sure that your information is always there while you're thinking about what you're going to do next with your business or what you're going to action. And so there was no really business as usual type of a protocol when it came to data. And like I said before, AIS, Advancement Information Services, just became a bottleneck. And so what we had to really focus on is changing from a service department to a solutions department. And so the data skills were there, but the platform for growth and the platform to build the solutions and then to grow into scalability and accessibility wasn't there.
Alex, thank you for helping us understand the state from which you started. One of the underlying infrastructure changes you undertook was migrating the CRM system from RE7 on-prem to NXT on the cloud with the goal of boosting efficiency and scalability. And second, the implementation of a cutting-edge data warehouse, laying the foundation for a data-driven decision-making to align with the university's strategic objectives. Can you walk us through the roadmap for the future state and vision you presented back when you started this journey for an ideal flow of information?
Sure. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the previous slide because I talked about all of the different points. But the previous slide shows the chaos and shows really. Could you go back? Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
So if you see all of the little people, that's people doing work. And so the gist of the slide is really that up to 90% of your work is actually spent on preparing your data, and only 5 to 10% of the time is really spent on the advancement services, collaborating with the business and growing with the business and aligning with their requirements. And so the time really was spent on providing the data to the business. And so if you go back to the slide that we were on, which is the future state, which we had laid out. Now, this is just really a future state of the data warehouse portion. There's just a lot of different components of the future state. But when it came to just flowing information out to the business, what we wanted to do is we wanted to, first of all, have the little orange thing is your Razor's Edge 7 database. And then the little cylindrical thing beside it is our data warehouse. And so what we really wanted to do is that's the Razor's Edge database. The data warehouse is the next one, which is with the first green check mark. What we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that we captured all of the business rules and the exceptions and the data cleaning and the classifying of data, which was in the access databases, which was manually done, had to become automated and had to be part of our data repository. So our data warehouse isn't just for analytics, it's actually an operational data store. And so what ended up happening is a lot of operational reports started coming out of it and flowing out into the business. And then you had an analytical platform which allowed for Power BI reports, which allowed looking at your data through different dimensions and different buckets and over longer periods of time for trends. The gist of this image really shows that all of our focus went into building a platform, and which ended up happening is a lot more of the time that advancement services was able to spend with the business, solving business problems, refining data requirements, and making sure that the information went straight to the business and aligned with their day-to-day operations, and they were actionable reports, and then aligned with strategic monthly or quarterly meetings. And so what we did, the very first two things that we had to do was we had to obviously update our CRM, which was Razor's Edge. We wanted to move that into the cloud to make the overall experience for the end users that much more engaging. So there's two things that we're dealing with here. There's the input and the management of data, and then there's the output and delivery of data, which was the data warehouse. So Razor's Edge really focused on the input of data, which gave us a lot of different advantages and features, such as better access because it was a web-based product as opposed to a system-based product. No maintenance because it was a software as a service as opposed to an on-prem solution. Better integration with other data. And also, it really allowed us to reestablish and redefine people's roles within the organization and their relationship with data. And then there was the data warehouse, which was really about automation of data, getting the data continually going to the business on a regular basis and from a daily operational level so that they would be familiarized with all of the data as it's flowing through, right up to KPIs and analytics. And then we went into self-serve reports for when people actually wanted their own reports. So if we go to the next slide.
Alex, that's just incredible. And I just want to interject quickly and say, we've all heard the change management statistic that 70% of change efforts fail to achieve their goals. So I'd love for you to dive in and share more on this slide about what are the key tenets in your roadmap planning that drove to the success you had in transforming to a data-driven culture.
So what we realized that I got a really rude awakening about 6 months into the project, because there's a lot of things. If you take a look at this slide, you have people, process, and technology, but process and technology involves people, and the people were not in a culture of being data driven or using data on a regular basis. And so it was literally a shock to a lot of people because of the amount of change that was going to take place. And so not only were they not a data driven organization, they were not an organization that was really conducive to change. So changes didn't move fast. Things remained pretty static for long periods of time. Processes were very well developed and established, but they were static. And what I realized is that everything is really a microcosm of something bigger at the university. So for instance, advancement services was kind of a microcosm, and I kind of dealt with a smaller team. And so the goal was to really start working on that small team and then making them more data driven, or making them able to service a data driven organization. And so from that standpoint, in terms of the people that were involved there, you really needed to invest in them, retrain them, reclassify positions, and then get them working in an environment where we were building the solution. Hang on one second, I'm just catching up here with my slides. Okay, so when it came to the people, we needed to make sure we had executive sponsorship. We needed to, we identified power users or champions. We invested in the people. We celebrated milestones. I recognized change. It was very, very hard. And eventually people recognized change is very hard. And the one thing that I've noticed, and when I said that, everything's a microcosm, like advancement services was the first to really ask. They went from being afraid of change to asking for change. This is a really contagious type of a positive feeling, because it spreads outwards. Because as we moved into the other divisions, and they started seeing this, and they started to embrace this, and more data leads to more questions, leads to more requirements, leads to more connecting the dots. And so everything that was really, the attitudes and the culture and everything was really tied to the processes that they had been doing, over and over and over again, a lot of the static processes. And so we really had to focus on automation, scalability, integration, reusability, standardization, simplification, and continuous improvement. And so there were hundreds of areas in which we had to really start looking at applying some of these basic principles when it came to processes. And then for the technology, we had the big platform investments. We made data efficient and easy to access. We made sure that we had integration between different systems. And we make sure that we really leveraged automation and data modeling. So going into the actual, how we roll this out, going back to the champions and the people, we created a group of power users or champions. We used them to help develop a minimum viable product. And then we helped them to develop communications and training for the rollout. We ended up having a pilot, and then the pilot ended up having pre-pilots or pre-releases. And so everything is really, it kind of started out with the Razor's Edge NXT rollout. That's where our champions program and our pilots really developed. There was really no MVP there in that case. MVP is what we use when we roll out new software or new product. But connecting with the people was really, that entire model now on how we roll out everything else was really during the Razor's Edge NXT upgrade. And so we focused on communication. We had a big kickoff. We created policy user agreements that we had all of the users sign. We redefined all of the end user roles, including job descriptions with regards to the data accountability aspect of it and their day-to-day jobs with respect to Razor's Edge. We created role-based training program and tracks. And then we had check-ins for progress and making sure that people had a certain level of training by a certain amount of time. And then we even introduced accelerated learning, which is the Blackbaud, I think, Learn Everything it's called, where we had groups of people that were either coming on at the last minute that need to be trained within a matter of days, as opposed to the monthly timeline that we had. And so we had different strategies in order to address all of this. And then we had the big bang, or the migration and the rollout, which occurred over a weekend. So the Thursday, Friday, we had meetings with everybody. We either had general sessions or we had individual role-based sessions. And then over the weekend, Blackbaud did their thing with the migration. And then Monday, we had Razor's Edge NXT. And so with the data warehouse, it was a very different change management plan. That one had very few people involved. It came from the top down. They were there to really define the reports, the KPIs, and the workbooks that we needed. It was really operational reporting versus analytical reporting. And then what we did was advancement services. Well, we started building the meetings around the reports. So the meetings became data driven. And so you weren't going there just for the sake of a meeting. You were there with a pre-built agenda based on reports you had received during the week. And then the discussion was to start with your performance or the metrics or some of the changes in what was happening. And so advancement services was always in attendance with these meetings because they were there to make sure that the data was there, they understood the business, and then any change in business strategy or any change in requirements or additional requirements could be built into the solution so then it could be fed back to the end user.
It's just incredible, Alex. Looking back at the transition from RE7 to RENXT and leveling up your business intelligence, what was the impact of the technological transformation and the crucial accompanying culture shift across the university's teams? And this is a two-part question as well. I'd love if you can give us a look under the hood, if we may, on the transform gift intake process you instituted leveraging Sky API.
So the impact was huge. And you don't really realize it as it's happening. It took a good year and a half just to get Razor's Edge NXT upgraded and the data warehouse up and running to a state where it was being used on a regular basis. And that's a very long time to roll out projects like that. In most private organizations, those are three to 6 month projects. And so, but during that time, because we shifted from the physical or the technical implementation of it, to the change management and the cultural transformation part of it. And as we did that, we built a model on how to reuse what we learned as we built outwards in the other areas of the university. And so what ended up happening is, 2 projects in a year and a half, and now we've got 5 or 6 projects at different stages, and these are less than 1 year projects. And so it really accelerated everything, and not only just the ability to move these projects from a technical standpoint, because now we had a good solid foundation of data and data integration and standards, but also in terms of changing people's minds and having people become more receptive to the change in their jobs and how this would impact them. And so, and this really, it comes down to, so the model that we built is really about the champions, the pilot, the minimum viable product. So wash, rinse, and repeat, right? And now all we have to do is start doing that, but we can do it outwards. And so we have 5 or 6 main projects right now. We have a gift intake project, which allows us to crowdsource the effort of collecting information for intaking gifts into gift processing. We have, and I'm going to get into that a little bit. I've got some more projects that left off, sorry. We've got more faculty adoption of Razor's Edge NXT as a university CRM. So we're going into faculties and we're asking faculties to start working with Razor's Edge NXT as the university CRM, which means that we want to start taking all of these little siloed databases of alumni and putting them into Razor's Edge. And that also ties into our MailChimp integration that we're currently rolling out. We're in the process of rolling it out right away, which allows coordinated communications within donor relations, marketing and brand, and alumni relations out to alumni. And soon the vision is to get faculty communications using this as well. We've got automated endowment statements that we're working on. We've got an endowment management system, which allows us to better steward our donors through the proper spending of endowment funds, which is a very, this really goes into faculties, because the tool that we've built in order to manage endowment funds allows each faculty to actually manage each of their endowment funds on an operational standpoint. So this tool that we've built is horizontal across all faculties and vertical across all levels of management, right to the president, to allow complete oversight of all of endowment spending. We're working on awards establishment and awards management, events coordination, and then we would like to be commercializing our data warehouse and our gift intake system that we're building right now. So if we go into some of the different things that we've done, this is a tool that we've started using called DevOps. And what it does is it allows you to balance operational work with developing your business. And so when I first joined the university, it was 95% operations and 5% development. And so they had an annual plan of, a list of things that they wanted to do by the end of the year, which went into an Excel sheet. which would be, these are the things that we're going to do to hopefully improve our business. And so we really had to start focusing on developing the business, because the more you develop the business, the less time you spend on operations, because a lot of what you're doing manually could be automated or reused and then scaled up. So this is just an illustration here of our delivery plans of the different tasks. So these little Gantt charts are really tasks, and they're color coded. Green is an operational task, and purple is a development task. And so if you see in Q2 of 2022, we had very little business development. Everything was operational. And as we moved in through the quarters, and as we built more capability, and as we developed our capabilities more and streamlined a lot of the operations, we were able to spend a lot more time on development and less time on operations. So now we spend a lot of time developing the business. It's now a 60-40 split, as opposed to 90% operations and 10% development. So I'm going to go over now our gift intake system that I briefly talked about, and how it's built and how we're leveraging Razor's Edge NXT Sky API. So one of the problems that we had was that gift processing was a huge bottleneck. We had dozens of emails coming in, if not hundreds of emails coming in from fundraisers, with information required to process a gift. And these emails, they could come in all at once. You can send an email all at once saying, I just got a gift for $100,000 from this donor. It's coming in by check. Here's all the information, enter it. In which case, a fundraiser needs to send an email, and gift processing needs to read the email and manually enter it into a gift batch. Or the more likely scenario is you have emails coming in, over a matter of weeks or months. I've got a donor who's potentially going to make $100,000 gift. Stay tuned. And then a few weeks later, okay, they're going to make the gift by check, and it's going to go to these funds. And I'll send you the terms of reference, or I'll send you the gift agreement later on. And then a few weeks later, they send the terms of reference and the gift agreement. And so this is happening, dozen gifts over a matter of months per fundraiser, and you've got 20 fundraisers. And so this now becomes a huge effort in all of the emails written, and then all of the emails that need to be managed and collected and kept track of. And then it needs to be sent over to gift processing, and then gift processing is technically doing the same thing. And then eventually they have to take all of the information and clean it up and enter it into a gift batch. And so all of that effort is now being consolidated into what the suggestion was made. Well, let's create a gift intake form where we can capture all this information. So, but if you even on paper, so at least it's structured and it's the same all the time. Well, that information still needed to be entered into a gift batch and still needed to be held onto until the information was complete. And so we built a system where we're going to build electronic forms. We're going to structure the information as soon as possible. And then when it's ready for gift batching, it's going to flow into the gift batch, and gift processing will no longer be data entry. It will be data reviewers and data reconcilers. And so what we did was this is how we conceived of this gift intake system. So the very first thing is, well, we were never getting consistent. How much time do I have left here? 10 minutes. Okay, I'm going to rifle through this. This first screen here is really the initial screen where you've got to enter your donor information. So there's a lot of information that you've got to enter here. People would have to type in the name, type in the constituent ID, whatever it is. This ties directly into Razor's Edge. You start typing in a donor's name. It uses the exact Razor's Edge search that you would use in Razor's Edge. If you can go back one slide, Laya. Oh, right here. So you just, Right here. Yeah.
Taking a moment to catch up. There we go.
What we'll do too is, you know what, I think the presentation will be available, and then there's references to the APIs that we're using so that, you know, you guys can use the APIs as well. So this donor search here, you can type in my name, my constituent ID, anything that you can type in the Razor's Edge NXT search, and it'll pull up the constituent. And then what we would do is you basically select the person, and then we can go to the next slide. Once you select the person, everything in this gift intake form is auto-populated, and that's it. You know who the person is. There's no typos, nothing. For batch processing, the only important thing here is the constituent ID, but all of this other additional information is there so that everybody can see it at any given time. So now this is how a gift intake ticket gets created, and that gift intake ticket may sit there for days, weeks, even months until all of the information is collected and can actually go to gift processing. So the next slide goes into another API call, or a set of API calls, campaigns, appeals, packages. So this is all information that's in Razor's Edge. Gift processing cannot process a gift until they get each of these elements. And that's because each of these elements aligns with all of our reporting by the different programs. So our campaign in Razor's Edge is set up like a program. So we have a campaign for annual, a campaign for principal giving, a campaign for major giving, a campaign for leadership, and a campaign for planned giving. And so this is how we make sure that our data goes in properly structured and then comes out in our KPI daily reports. Next slide. This here, more API calls. So if you're entering a gift intake item, which is a payment to a pledge payment, you can actually pull up the pledge and pull up the payment. Yeah, great. There we go. Okay. And it will also pull up your schedule and your payment schedule. So all of this, this data entry work that was formerly done by gift processing is now pushed out to the fundraisers. So we've converted fundraisers to data entry people, but also they don't have to type in emails, right? And so they spend more time entering this data, but they spend less time typing out emails and managing emails, multiple emails, because this becomes a central piece of work where the information gets loaded into. The other thing that we have is, and I think we've passed it, but we have an area where you can drag and drop attachments. You can drag an email directly into it, or you can drag a term of reference directly, or the bottom part there, upload supporting documents and email messages. That allows you to just drag and drop all of the emails you've had from donors or the terms of reference or the gift agreements. And so this follows the gift intake ticket all the way up until it goes, gets batched and it gets processed. And so you have the opportunity. We have another system which indexes all of these media files, which is called Banner Document Manager. But if you wanted to keep track of these files in Razor's Edge, you could also upload them into Razor's Edge along with the gift. And then this is the opportunity, sorry. Yeah, this is where you would attach an opportunity or a proposal in Razor's Edge 7 to the gift. And so it's just a way of getting more complete information prior to entry. This is where they would select the funds, either one fund or a split gift to multiple funds. Once again, an API that makes a call to Razor's Edge to make sure that when the data is ready to go, the batch is perfectly created with no data errors in it.
Alex, thank you for walking us through the gift intake process. It's really incredible, and I see there are some questions that came in, so I'm going to fly through the next couple slides with you, and then hopefully we can take some time to answer some questions. Just wanted to quickly hear from you, what's next? How do you plan to take these key investments in data transformation and use them to scale across other silos? How do you plan to use Razor's Edge NXT to continue to remove traditional silos within higher education?
Well, I did talk about some of the other initiatives, such as making Razor's Edge the CRM database for the entire university, which is really allowing us to collaborate more with other faculties, granting them access to edit their own alumni records, manage their own alumni records, and then use our MailChimp platform to make sure that communications go out in the exact same way they would from the general university communications, and then they're also coordinated with the university communications. And so we've got multiple projects that where we're working with faculties or the finance team in order to start removing these silos. And like I said, a lot of the challenges are cultural and change management challenges, and that's where we use our model, where we identify champions, we gather requirements, we create a minimum viable product, we use those champions to do a rollout strategy, and then we roll things out. And so one implementation fully rolled out could potentially be a pilot for the next implementation that needs to go outwards, right? So this is really just repeating what we're doing. We find, we've had a lot of failures along the way, but we pick our successes and we move forward with those.
What an incredible story. Thank you for sharing with us today what it's like to drive change and the important technology adoption that you've led through a lens of a more traditional institution where processes can be bureaucratic. To conclude, what parting advice would you share with our audience on finding that coveted middle ground between the tried and true and the path forward to digital transformation? What contributing factors along the path to innovation were most valuable to your team? And what next steps would you suggest that our audience can take to lay the foundation to build upon a culture of innovation at their respective institutions or organizations?
Get executive support and executive sponsorship. The vision has to be there and the desire has to be there. And then you're going to need a fairly substantial budget. Now, even though it may look expensive, if you look at your cost of ownership over 3 to 5 years, it's going to significantly go down once you implement your solution. Don't be afraid to fail. You gotta fail to succeed, and that really goes down to change. Change is hard, but the more you're used to it, the easier it is to get back up and keep going. And that's how you win people over. Once your people go through the experience, and I said this before, it becomes contagious and it spreads outwards.
Thank you. And we've got your quote there, you fail when you give up, so keep trying. We have 1 minute left. I'm not sure, this is a fairly new platform. I'm not sure if we'll all get booted. So if there are any questions that we don't get to answer in the chat, we can follow up later. But just wanted to say thank you, Melody, for the awesome feedback there. We do have a question about what if the fund does not yet exist with respect to the gift intake form?
Yeah, so we have, there's a button called New Fund Request. So we built a sub-process that actually requests a fund from finance and from gift processing, because you have to set up the fund in our financial system, which is Banner, and you have to set up the fund in Razor's Edge, and they have to be linked. And then once the fund is created, then you can assign a fund to it. And so you can keep the gift there. It'll just be in a suspended state. And so we have the different states on whether a fundraiser still needs to add information to it, or whether it's ready for processing. So we have very controlled stages, and we're planning on developing dashboards. So when you log in, these are your tickets, and these are your tickets that have gone through and been processed from a fundraiser perspective, and then from a gift processing data entry perspective. These are the gifts that are ready for processing. All of the data is there.
Thank you for that. There are a couple more questions, and thank you everyone for the awesome feedback. I will go ahead and just launch a survey, and then hopefully we can continue to go through some questions. Let me just launch the survey. And then for any folks here, Alex is joining us at BBCon in Seattle, so would love to see you there in person and chat more through this.
Yeah,
we have a.
Sorry, we'll definitely go through every question, and we'll post a response to it.
We can try to grab another question. Does this mean the fundraiser, this one's from Andy Nolan, does this mean the fundraiser first enters the gift information as they first confirm the gift will be made and can keep updating it until the gift is actually received?
Yes, yes. So a fundraiser would enter a ticket, and then with the minimal information. So we wanted to make this thing so that you could just create a ticket with the bare amount of information. And then the next time you logged into it, you would just see that ticket there, and it's just waiting for you to update it until all of the information's there.
Thank you. Sherilyn asks, is this form built within NXT?
No, it's built using JavaScript and Microsoft Forms. We wanted it to look like NXT, and that's why it kind of looks like it, because we just wanted to make it as seamless of an experience as possible for the end user. That's something that really talks to the culture and the change management side of it, right? You want to be very consistent in the way that you roll out solutions.
Another question from Sherilyn, is it advisable to democratize data entry, meaning anyone in the team and not just data team members can enter data? And this was from earlier in the presentation, so you may have covered this.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to do. That's how, when we were discussing this, there were people on both sides. You had people saying that, well, yeah, we'd like other divisions and other units to enter information. And then you had people saying, well, it's going to be inaccurate, or there's going to be errors, and what's going to happen. So in that case, you need to build the tools, right? You need to build the tools, the controls, the training, the communication, and the collaboration, so that the data does become more accurate. But nothing can beat the scalability of adding more people to the data entry and management of it. The solution needs to be built around the cleanliness of the data, and so that's where we're going to, focus our efforts on.
I think I've gotten through all the questions. We'll review after the session and follow up personally if there are any that we missed. Huge thanks to you, Alex, and thank you to our audience. We hope you found today's session impactful. And like I mentioned before, we're thrilled to have Alex join us again at BBCon Seattle in September, and we'd love to meet you in person there. So thank you all, and have a good rest of the day.
Bye, everybody.